Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the panel Women in Animation, co-presented by Animation First and Women in Animation. My name is Delphine Celes Alvarez, co-curator of the festival. And on behalf of the festival team and Women in Animation, I thank you for being here with us this afternoon. We've brought together talented artists and filmmakers who are in a mid-career to discuss their work and professional journey and the opportunities and challenges they have encountered. The panel will be moderated by Ashley Gerst. Ashley is a 2D and 3D and motion graphics animator based in Brooklyn. She worked on projects for commercial shows and feature films. And in 2019, she finished her first animated short, The Spirit Team. It was shown in over 40 festivals and received many accolades. And she's currently working on a new film titled Being Pushed Down by Shadow. Ashley is also a full-time professor of animation and game design at William Patterson University and an adjunct at the School of Visual Art. And she's also a co-leader of Women in Animation's New York City chapter. Welcome, Ashley. But before I pass it on to Ashley, I also want to welcome Nicholas Elliot, who will translate for one of the panelists, Elliot. So if you see him speaking while being muted, it's because he's translating into French. And not because we are forbidding him to speak. I just want to make that clear. So thank you, Nicholas, for being here, and welcome, Ashley, and I'm handing it over to you now. Thank you.
Thank you all so much for coming to our panel. And I also want to extend a thank you for Delphine for her introduction, and then also to all of our panelists who are here. I think it would be best to let everybody introduce themselves. So I will reach out to each panelist and introduce them by name, and then allow them to say a little bit about themselves. And then also, as you are telling us a bit about what you do, please tell us a little bit about how you got there too. So we'll start with Claire.
Thank you, Ashley. Hello, everyone. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to be here with all of the awesome panelists that we have today or tonight, for those of us who are in France. So I'm Claire Matz. I graduated from Gobelin as a director and animator in animated filmmaking in 2019. I've been working at Netflix Tokyo for 2 years after that, at first as an artist in animation, and I've been in various studios sent by Netflix there over Tokyo for a year. And then I was working in creative production at Netflix. And I helped to create a visual development studio at Netflix Tokyo called the Netflix Anime Creators Space, which is open now. And then I left Japan a little bit less than a year ago. And I came back to France last summer to create my own company called Yabuna Uzagi, in which we create world building for creation and expansion of IPs. And we also create our original projects. And the first one is Autotopia. It's a story world, a transmedia story world, in which we have feature films, video games, series, even objects. And we are creating co-production deals right now with partners to create the first movie, which is called Amrot. And it's a cli-fi universe, which we're very proud of. And I hope that you will get to discover some documents about this project soon, but that's what I'm doing right now. Thank you.
Thank you. And cli-fi is such an interesting genre, especially picking up steam more recently. I'm very interested to hear more about this project. Next is Aaliyah. If you would like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about how you got to where you are today.
Bonjour, merci Ashley, merci à tous et merci au festival de nous donner cette possibilité de discuter tous ensemble. Donc moi, mon parcours, il a commencé dans l'animation avec mes études à l'école des Gobelins, comme Claire. vous laisse traduire.
So hello, everyone. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you all. Thank you to the festival for giving us this opportunity to talk together. My career, my trajectory also started at the Gobelin School, like Claire.
Et à ce moment-là, donc j'ai découvert le milieu de l'animation que je connaissais pas beaucoup, mais je me suis prise d'amour pour ce média et j'ai découvert dans ma formation des envies de réalisation très fortes. Et donc suite à ça, j'ai fait un premier court-métrage et ensuite j'ai voulu intégrer la chaîne de l'animation pour travailler avec des gens. Ça m'intéressait de trouver une émulation de travail.
So at the time that I was in school, I really discovered the environment of animation, the milieu of animation, which I didn't know very well at the time. And I discovered that I really loved this medium. And while at school, I discovered a very strong desire to direct. So I made my first short, and then I entered the animation chain with a real desire to work with various people.
Et donc, ça me semblait plus inspirant de travailler avec des gens et je voulais apprendre vraiment tous les métiers de la chaîne de l'animation avant d'être en capacité de faire les films que j'avais envie de faire. Et j'ai eu la chance de travailler sur des très beaux films longs métrages comme Le Chat du Rabbin, Le Jour des Corneilles, Ernest et Célestine et d'autres qui m'ont fait rencontrer des gens formidables et nourri mes envies de réalisation pour ensuite.
It seemed more inspiring to me to work with various people and really to learn all the different jobs within the chain of animation in order to be able to one day make the films that I wanted to make. And so I had the good luck to work on a variety of great projects like Le Chat du Rabbin, Le Jour des Corneilles, Ernest et Célestine, and really met extraordinary people along the way.
Et donc, suite à cette expérience où j'ai travaillé surtout en tant qu'animatrice, j'ai commencé à développer un premier projet de long métrage. Et ensuite, j'ai croisé le parcours j'ai croisé Didier Brunner, le producteur des Armateurs, qui m'a proposé de travailler sur Les Hirondelles de Kaboul. Et donc là, j'ai co-réalisé mon premier film d'animation avec Zabou Breitman.
So after that experience, where I worked mostly as an animator, I started developing my first feature film. And that's when I met Didier Brunner, the producer of Les Armateurs. And he offered for me to co-direct The Swallows of Kabul with Zabou Breitman.
Voilà, et maintenant j'ai plein d'autres projets de réalisation de films divers et de séries aussi. Voilà.
And now I have lots of other projects on various films and series as well. And that's it.
I had the opportunity to see The Swallows of Kabul when it came out in 2019. It's a beautiful film. So next is Tylee.
Hello, everybody. My name is Tylee, and I came to US to study School of Visual Art in computer art, and where I fall in love with stop motion, strangely. And so during my 2 years over the schools, I get in touch, started to play with digital and also mixing with stop motion, like hands-on making puppets mixed with different mediums. And currently I'm working as a production designer and also stop motion artist, and also teaching in School of Visual Art as well. And how did I fall in love with stop motion? I feel it's really the material of and the charming of the touchable things. Yeah, I just enjoy like making things, like even daily objects move. So yeah, and I really find joy in making them. So yeah.
Great. And I've had the opportunity to see some of your like ceramic work and how it's such an interesting choice for stop motion, and it's a really beautiful the way that you breathe life into the different ceramic sculptures that you create.
Thank you, Ashley.
Next is Angela.
Hello, I'm Angela DeVito. I'm so excited to be on this panel. I graduated from the School of Visual Arts in 2014, and in September of the same year, I interned at Hornet, which is an advertising company here in New York. And I went on to work for commercials for a bunch of different commercial studios. And in 2017, I got to dip my toe into more TV series work at Titmouse, New York. I started there on DreamWorks Adventures of Tip and O, which was on Netflix. And I animated on a few shows there, like Nico and the Sword of Light season 2 and Midnight Gospel, which is also a really fun show on Netflix. I've been working on and off at Titmouse since then. I'm currently on Harriet the Spy as a retakes animation supervisor, and that's on Apple Plus. I also animation directed the Comedy Central series Lofi, which was created by Bobby Moynihan. That's on YouTube. And yeah, throughout my career, like I think being in the commercial area of animation was really beneficial because on certain jobs I was able to do a bunch of things like storyboarding, sometimes worked on pitch packets and character designs. So that was really beneficial in my early career to help me just get the full scope of the animation pipeline. And yeah, that's me.
Great, and really many different shows and things like that I'm sure many in the audience are very familiar with. Out of what you've mentioned, the Midnight Gospel is like one of my absolute favorite animated series at the moment.
That show was wild, and I will tell you, we had a blast animating
I
on
can
it.
tell it looks so much like it was so much fun to animate.
Yeah, no, it was.
Eleanor, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yes, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Eleanor Coleman, and I'm American, but I've lived in Paris, France for the last 30 years. And I began working at a TV station here, Channel 1, when you turn on it's called TF1. And I was part of the team that created the kids department there. And I worked there for about 15 years, which is quite a long time to work at a network. And then I really wanted to work more internationally. And after the 2008 financial crisis, television changed a lot, and now it's radically changed. So it was a great time to branch out. And I started working in feature films with a company called Indie Sales. For example, I bought Florence Miai's film, The Crossing, that's in this festival, Animation First, a beautiful hand-painted on glass film. A film called My Life is a Zucchini. It's a stop motion film. Wonderful story about an orphan boy who finds a new family. And then I also work with a large French studio called Blue Spirit, doing the pre-sales and all the business development for the studio. And then I also produce myself. So it's been a great experience to go from being like a salaried worker to be able to work with lots of different companies, and all the different experiences led me to start an association in France that was very much inspired by women in animation called Les Femmes s'animent, and we're quite active in our industry in France, and I'm also active kind of across Europe working with women's organizations that have started up, and that's really satisfying and exciting and sometimes overwhelming to see how much we need to do to help our industry grow and be more equal and tell more inclusive, diverse stories, and hopefully there'll be many more people like Elliot and Joanna who will tell their stories and make interesting films and lead the way for more women to express themselves like that.
Amazing. It's so wonderful to have someone else in this panel that is, a part of an organization, just like Women in Animation. And I'm very much looking forward to hearing more about what you have to say about it when we get to that point. And last panelist to introduce is Joanna. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Yes, I'm Joanna Quinn, and I'm based in the UK. And I went to college at Middlesex University and did graphics. So I started off thinking I wanted to do illustration or yeah, basically illustration. And we got introduced to animation during the first year. And then I got obsessed with animation. It was just wonderful. And so I made a film for my graduation. It was my final project called Girls' Night Out, and created this character Beryl that has stuck with me. And this is like in 1987, and so a long time ago. And the first festival it went to was Annecy, and it won 3 prizes at Annecy. And for me, because I'd been in this bubble where everybody else was doing graphic design and I didn't know anything about animation. So to go to a film festival and to show your film, and suddenly my eyes were opened up to all these fantastic films. However, I did notice a lack of women protagonists in these films, and there was quite a lot of sexism and quite a lot of racism. But because it was funny, everybody was laughing, And so at that point, I felt that I had a sort of responsibility to make films with strong female characters, and to, I don't know, just try and redress the balance a bit. So that's what I've been doing. And I've made, we've just finished Affairs of the Art, well, last year, and that's the 4th Beryl film. So she really has stuck with me. And as time goes on, I am turning into Beryl, my waistline and everything. But also we've done commercials. We did the Charmin toilet paper commercials for 13 years. So we did lots of commercials as well. But we set up a studio. I'm saying me and my partner Les, because he's the writer and I'm the director, and he produces and I animate. And it's definitely a team. It's a team. And we set up a studio organically, just bringing on people when we needed them because of the projects, rather than setting up a company and then having to feed the company. So that was quite nice. So there was never the pressure to do jobs that we didn't want to do. So when we made the commercials, we said, okay, we're making commercials and we're going to put the money back into filmmaking. And so that's what we're doing. The last film, Affairs of the Art, was 75% toilet paper money and 15%, about 15, I think, the NFB, the National Film Board of Canada, because they came on as a co-production. So at the moment, we're just enjoying traveling with the film online and also in person a little bit. So that's me.
Great. Well, thank you all so much for being here. I just wanted to extend my thanks again. It has been so inspiring to just hear your introductions, and I'm looking forward to continuing this discourse. The first question I have is going to be back to you, Joanna. And you did touch on this a little bit in your introduction. You mentioned that you've been working with your character Beryl for over 30 years, since 1987. So it's quite a long time to work with one character and continue developing her. And so my question is, how has she evolved over the last 3 decades? And then you also mentioned that she kind of came out of the fact that there just aren't a lot of female protagonists, and how has that evolved in the last 30 years? Because there have been a lot of changes in strong female protagonists over the last several years too.
I think she came about really because the 1980s was quite a political time, and I became quite politically active, and particularly about feminism. But I had always drawn men. Whenever I had to draw a character, it was always a male character, which is obviously because of the society we live in. The generic person is always a male. And so I made a conscious decision to draw women more. And as soon as I started drawing women more, I felt they had to tell stories. I couldn't just draw a woman without really understanding, who is this woman? And because I understand women better, and that's how Girls' Night Out came about. I wanted to make a film, and so it was all women going on a night out. And of course, they go and see a male stripper, and the whole thing was like turning turning things on its head. So what I wasn't comfortable at the time was being sort of angry and negative in terms of being political about feminism. And so I felt much comfortable doing humorous work, but with really strong characters, so that it was just a sort of drip, 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 rather than a kadonk, and just trying to make people think, I guess. And then, so that was that film. So it was definitely an answer to what was going on at the time politically and in my life. And then the next film was about sexism in the workplace, where Beryl is a union rep and has to deal with this macho man in the workplace. And again, that was very relevant at the time. And well, it still is, of course, but it was something we wanted to address. Then we had a big break. I did other films as well, but without the Beryl character. But then after doing ads, I think I was feeling like I wasn't being creative enough, because when you do ads, it's creative, but it's not your own ideas. And so the next Beryl film was actually about her being creative and wanting to be creative. And so she gets interested in filmmaking and avant-garde stuff. And, you know, so that was about that. And then the last film was actually about not just Beryl, but about the rest of her family. And I think, because I felt we had explored Beryl to the full, but people were saying, oh, do another Beryl film. And in a way I felt, well, we both, Les and I, because Les writes the films, you know, we both felt that we'd really done her character. And then we thought, well, let's introduce more characters, her family, and then it'll tell us more about her, you know, from different angles. So that's how they've evolved, the films.
Amazing. It's really very interesting to hear that, and how her experiences have changed as well throughout the last 30 years. It's great. So my next question is for Tylee. So, you know, in kind of continuing questions regarding characters, your animation style focuses so much on creating tactile characters, and in many cases they are very avant-garde in their overall look and feel. Can you tell us a little bit about the process you use to create your characters and how it has evolved through your career?
So my subjects and characters are often about like play and things I'm curious about. And I make things, I love making things and getting my hands dirty. So I like to try and put things together, even though they are not relevant. So sometimes you will see I use like recycled materials, and yeah, and if there's time allowed, I like to experiment like something like wood, foam, metal, and maybe make some mold and casting for parts for the puppets. And lately I've been in love with using ceramics. One is because it's I use it for personal projects, so I don't feel too much pressure on the time. And the other is I don't see so many, it's kind of fragile materials. So yeah, maybe a little bit interesting to see how you animate a thing that is like so solid and fragile. And so my process usually starts with like sketches. It could be a napkin doodle, or it could be a little bit more refined, and then bring it into a physical thing like a 2D puppet, paper puppet, or a 3D set. And like Ashley, you also like hand build sets as well. Yeah. So, and sometimes I utilize digital materials such as Illustrator to refine the files and then bring it to like digital cutting. And other times I just go hands-on if I only need one set of the props. Yeah. And yeah, and I really enjoy mixing both worlds and putting irrelevant things together and see what sparks like fire.
It's a great process. Oh, thank you for telling us a bit more about it. My next question is for Angela. And so to move into talking about the production process of more tactile things in some way, can you tell us a bit about the production process of The Heartless Prince, and you know, how your graphic novel materialized from an idea to a Disney Hyperion production?
Yes, Heartless Prince was wild. I was asked to pitch the short film Heartless Prince, which is on YouTube, for Disney XD. And the person that asked me, David Levy, I was ignorant, didn't know he worked for Disney. So when I got the pitch packet and saw Disney, I was like, oh my God. But they were doing a segment called Polaris, which was, they wanted to put it later at night, and it was based on video games. So all the shorts had to have like a video game base, like side scrolling. And mine personally was more open world. It was based on like a quest-based fantasy game. At the time, I was very into Breath of the Wild. I was I was playing a lot of Breath of the Wild. So I wanted to do a film based on that, that idea. So my film was about a rogue who was on a quest to retrieve the stolen heart of a prince. And it follows her going through and defeating all these monsters to get to the castle to return the heart. I'm not sure if I was the only female director, but I was the only film that had a female protagonist. And this was in 2017. And it's interesting because, you know, Joanna just said that her film was one of the, like a rare one that had a female protagonist in the 80s. And we're still facing this issue today, clearly. So that came out in August of 2017. And the director of IP that I was working under, she really loved the idea. And she was like a big champion of it, which was really nice. And she was passionate about bringing it into another medium, either a show or a book, which it did become. So she connected me with the Disney Publishing division, and I was paired with a writer because I came from an animation background. I had never written a graphic novel script. So I asked them to pair me with a writer, which was really illuminating. And I discovered through that process that I really loved writing. I mean, I love reading. I do a ton of reading. I read a ton of fantasy and young adult books. So it was really great to like tap into my love of literature and bring it into my career and my actual work. And I just fell in love with script writing and the whole process behind making a graphic novel. And the graphic novel came out this November. Let me actually unblur my screen so I could just show it. It came out as a book, and it's really wild to see it as a real book.
Amazing, congrats.
Thank you. And yeah, it's just, you know, it's one of those things that if you asked me when I graduated if I would ever make a comic or a graphic novel, I probably would say no. Like, you don't know where your career is going to lead you. And it's just really amazing. You never know where you're going to go. So yeah.
That's great. And what an interesting story. Thank you for sharing that with us. All right. So my next question is for Claire. We're going to move away from tactile media for just a moment and talk a little bit about Claire's role. So Claire is a creative producer, and I've noticed that when speaking with others that are not within the animation industry, sometimes people don't quite understand what a producer role is. Claire, can you just describe to us what a creative producer is and what you do?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the question. And it's pretty funny that it's just coming after Angela just said that you never know where you're going to go with your career. Because I initially wanted to be just like an animator, and then when school ended, I figured out that I was interested in directing. And then when I started to work, I understood that I was actually interested in producing, because I was working with mainly producers when I was at Netflix, and as an artist when I was in studios. And I had the chance to be in the creative production team in Netflix Tokyo. And those producers are actually taking care of all the let's say artistic side of production. This is where we kick off projects. We read a lot of scripts. We decide which one is going to be like a project that is worth pursuing or not. we work with authors, we work with creators, we choose the studios to attach to a project. So we meet a lot of people, a lot of artists, and that's the side of the job that I really enjoy the most. And I think that ultimately I found out that there is not a single definition of the work of a producer. I think a producer has to do a lot of different things, and no matter what you do and the kind of producer you are, you have to understand a lot about the industry, and you have to, I think, understand 3 major areas, which are the financial area, the production management, which is like how to keep a show on schedule and budget. And the financial part is, of course, budget, but it's also like not just how to handle the money, but also how to bring the money to your show and to your project. And of course, the artistic side. So when I call myself a creative producer, I'm sort of picking up the words that for me fits what I like to do and what I consider to be like the best position for me as a producer to be. But of course, I also have to understand the other parts of the job. And I think that all of the producers understand the 3 different areas, but they have to sort of choose in which one they feel the best. And all of the profiles are different and complementary. So I think that coming from an artistic background, having been trained as an artist, having worked in studios as an animator, background artist, layout artist, I understand the chain of production pretty well, and I understand the needs of artists. And when I'm working on the production side, I know how to talk to them, and I also know as a technician what's going to happen, what kind of problem can happen in a project if the management side is not done well. So it's very complementary, and I really enjoy doing that, knowing that it's really enjoyable to work as a producer who understands artists and who can be a bridge between producer who has not worked as artists, but are way better than I am on the financial part, for example. And between them and between the artists. So that's how I would define a creative producer. And I think for me, you could also say that it's an artistic producer. I think people use both terms. So that would be my take on it.
Great, thank you for explaining that. I feel that has probably shed some light on what a creative artistic producer does for our audience. Thank you. My next question is for Aaliyah. So directing your first feature is, quite a challenging and new undertaking. What was one of the most rewarding parts about directing it, The Swallows of Kabul, and then what was the most challenging?
Tout a été extrêmement intense et enrichissant. En fait, du fait que ça soit un premier film, en fait, j'avais tout à apprendre et tout à découvrir. Et en premier lieu, découvrir mes envies, en fait, au travers de ce projet-là, en expérimentant et en lâchant prise sur tout ce que je connaissais. Parce qu'on travaillait à 2, j'ai dû apprendre de ma co-réalisatrice et me laisser déconstruire avec tous les automatismes que j'avais. J'ai dû apprendre de nouveau.
It was all extremely intense and enriching. Because it was a first film for me, I had to learn everything and discover everything. And starting with discovering what my desires were for the film. I had to experiment. I had to let go of everything I thought I knew. And because it was a co-direction, I had to learn from my co-director and deconstruct what I had done before or what I had learned.
Et c'est très déstabilisant car en tant que réalisatrice, on attend de nous de diriger toute une équipe, on attend de nous d'amener un film au bout et donc devoir faire le travail en tant que tel tout de suite et apprendre en même temps en découvrant qu'on ne sait pas du tout le faire, c'est très, très embarrassant.
It's very destabilizing because as a director, you're expected to lead a team and bring a film to the finish line. And so to have to do that work and at the same time learn that you really don't know how to do that work is very embarrassing.
Et c'est là où on apprend à faire confiance aux autres, en fait, voir qu'on ne dirige pas un bateau tout seul, mais qu'on travaille avec une équipe qui nous emmène plus loin et qui nous fait découvrir vraiment quelles sont ses envies, à savoir, oui, on veut raconter des histoires, mais on ne peut pas le faire tout seul. Et ça, c'est un apprentissage de toute la vie, en fait. Et ça a été la grande révélation de ma vie, je crois, et qui m'a donné un élan pour aujourd'hui faire des films d'une autre manière, avec ce que j'ai vraiment envie de raconter.
So that's where you really have to learn to trust other people. You know, you're not the only captain on the ship. You can't be alone on it. You have to learn to work with a team to get further, to go further, and to really discover what the shared desire is, which is to tell stories. And that's something you don't do alone. That's something that one learns and keeps learning over a whole life. And I think it was really the big discovery of my life, and that's given me really a new impetus and breath to make films now and have other projects that are done in a completely different way.
Et c'est ça que j'aime beaucoup dans le cinéma d'animation, c'est plus que dans d'autres médias et dans d'autres milieux, il y a cette complémentarité qui est essentielle et qui décuple l'artistique. Et c'est ça, c'est vraiment ce qui conforte ma passion aujourd'hui dans ce milieu-là.
And that's what I really love about animation, is that more than in other mediums or in other environments, there's this really essential aspect of complementarity, and it really makes things that much more artistic. And that's really made me feel comfortable and right in my passion for animation.
Amazing. Oh,
Super.
sorry. Absolutely amazing. And the way that you describe storytelling is something I am certainly going to remember, and the way that you worked with your crew and your in order to make this amazing film. So really wonderful. My next question is for Eleanor. So Eleanor is the co-vice president for an organization in France that is very similar to Women in Animation. Eleanor, can you tell us more about what it's like for women working in France's animation industry and what initiatives you're working on?
Yeah, sure. So one thing that's really wonderful in France is that we have an extraordinary base to draw on, because we have incredible schools throughout the country, and we have incredible funding. We have national funding and regional funding. And they really support artistic projects. And then we have people making features like Elliot has, and a lot of series production, either original productions, or we do a lot of service work. So the industry is completely booming in France. And we're actually the third largest producer of animation behind America and Japan. So for not a very big country, it's a very, very thriving industry. And it's an industry where you can move from short films to series to feature films. You know, there's a lot of flexibility and a lot of adaptability in terms of what you want to do as a creator. And what we found when we got started in our organization, that there was very little, this was 6 years ago, you know, it's a different mentality in France than in America. And there was not a lot of cooperation between women when we started, which was very interesting for me to see as an American working in France, this kind of unsureness about whether I can trust somebody or not. It took time for everyone to start to trust one another and understand how they could work together. And then we started doing a lot of different events, and we had sort of roundtable discussions, and we found out that sexual harassment in the studios was a huge issue. And this was before the Me Too movement and all what's gone on since then. And it's kind of hard to sort of jump back before COVID and remember what it was like, because it's had such an extraordinary effect on all of our lives in so many ways, and especially in animation, because we were able quite quickly all over the world to transform to working from home. So the issues that were going on in studios are a bit less present because people are spending less time in studios. But what we found was that harassment was a huge issue. And so we started to work a lot with that and help people understand how they can navigate that. And something that's very interesting in France is that actually if there is harassment in the studio owners are responsible. And that has spawned all kinds of continuing education here, which is really grown to the extent that the Centre National de Cinéma, which is our main funding body, now if you want to get funding as a producer, you have to do a sexual harassment continuing education program. It's mandatory for everyone. So that was one thing that was really a kind of fascinating thing. And that led to doing a lot of mentoring programs, which didn't really exist here and have been very successful, which is nice. And we've now expanded our mentoring into the African continent with a project that we'll be presenting in Annecy this year. And we also take advantage of the fact that Annecy is such an incredible meeting point for people in animation all over the world. And hopefully this year it will be again, after 2 years of being a bit online and then extremely French. And in Annecy, we do many different events. Elliot participated in one, I think maybe 4 or 5 years ago. We used to have breakfast meetings before the day got started, where we would invite people to come and talk and exchange. And we host a big summit every year on Monday before the festival starts with women in animation around different topics, trying to include as many women from around the world. But I think the issues really are the same everywhere, which is that in schools, you have really equality in the students, if not more women. And then as time goes forward, there are less and less women in important creative roles. And that's something that we'd really like to change. And we'd also like to change the way content is produced, in the sense that there can be a lot more people expressing themselves, and that the work that we're doing can be a really strong reflection of our audiences, especially children, of what their daily life really is like. And I got started in animation because I wanted to work for children. So when I worked at the television station, I always said I work for children at TF1. So that was my motivating. That was my motivation, was to work for kids. And now that I've sort of expanded out, what I'm really interested in is helping people grow, helping people find their way at different points in their career. If you take the example of the Traversée, Florence's film, it took them over 10 years to make that film. Florence has been making extraordinary short films. And then to make that feature was a really, really long journey. And I'm also very interested in stories that are not necessarily evident, and also in working on films that are kind of breaking the mold, because I think we're in a really strong time right now for animation. There's so many platforms and so many ways that we can see animation, and people can accept animation, and there's a huge explosion in adult animation. So I hope that will continue, and that more people will have the opportunity to express themselves the way they want to, and that more people will feel seen.
And that's a great initiative and such an amazing organization. One thing you mentioned that it seems that things are trending, relatively like 50-50 within the classroom, and then not so much in practice within the industry. And that is true. believe it is 60% of animation students are actually women, but only 20% are actually working within the industry upon graduation. So the disparity there is very high.
Yeah, what we've seen is that, you know, there are more and more women working in the industry. The thing, there's different parameters that make it difficult. Is that a lot of times that when women get to the age where they're ready to take on a very strong role with a lot of responsibility, they're having children. So it's hard to balance that. And it's hard for the people making decisions to believe in them. And it's also harder for women to take on that responsibility. Also, we've really, what's really frustrating is to see that women are not given the budgets. And so therefore they're not getting paid the same, except when in the big studio projects, but we don't have big studios in France. We work basically in an independent industry. So I think it's really a very strong collective effort that where we need to provide the support. People need to keep working. We need to provide the community that can take care of them. And we need to provide the opportunity to allow women to be working on really big projects if they want to, right? You know, I mean, everybody should be comfortable in working the way that they feel best. But hopefully, if you want to move out of the short film world, because we're very lucky in France, you can live as a short film maker. There are the means to do so. But if you'd like to grow, that's possible.
Great, and I agree that the income disparity is also something that we see pretty consistently within the United States, which actually brings me to asking Angela a question. We'll segue into that. My question for Angela is, so Titmouse in New York City recently successfully unionized. And so can you tell us a little bit about this huge step and why this is a huge step for animators in the greater New York area? And then also what role you had in it?
Sure. Yeah, this was really exciting. Titmouse in New York City was voluntarily recognized this January by Titmouse management. We were really inspired by, if you don't know much about Titmouse, the studio, they have 3 studios, one in LA, one in Vancouver, and us here in New York City. And I think last year or 2 years ago, Vancouver successfully unionized. I think they had over like 95% of the workers who approved to unionize. And we were really inspired by them because that left us as the only Titmouse studio who wasn't unionized. In the New York animation landscape, we haven't had an animation union, I believe, since the 1980s. It was always something that, you know, people spoke about, but we thought would never happen. So a bunch of us got to talking together, and a lot of it is reaching out one-on-one, talking to your fellow coworkers about what they like about the studio and things that they think can be improved upon. And when we did the card signing, we got more than 90% of our coworkers to sign representation cards to join TAG, the Animation Guild, and IATSE Local 839. And it's really amazing because IATSE Local 839 right now is mainly in California. This is the first time that they have a division outside of California here in New York, which is really great because, you know, there's a lot of animation here on the East Coast. You know, there's Georgia. We have a robust animation community here in New York. The main thing that pushed us toward this was that a lot of our coworkers were leaving New York and going to LA, oftentimes moving just from Titmouse New York to Titmouse LA because of the better terms and the better benefits. You know, California, they've been unionized for over 70 years. They're kind of considered, you know, the hub of hub of entertainment, not necessarily animation, but, you know, and we have a lot of talent here, and there is no reason where we're within the same company why we should have to move in order to get better benefits. So the main things that are important to us are addressing things like career longevity, better paths where like it's a clear trajectory of how we can move forward. How can we move from animators to like animation directors to directing on a show? Right now it's a little bit murky about how you would do that. Health insurance, right now we work contract to contract. If our contract ends, we either have to pay COBRA or you go without insurance. A lot of people go without insurance. And a lot of animators here are starting to have families. So that's a big issue. Scheduling, how can we as artists and producers have a say in what the scheduling is like, because we're there firsthand and we know how long things take. And wage minimums, which like we were talking about before, not only between women and men, but there's a huge pay gap between New York and LA for people who are doing the same amount of work. So those are things that are all really important. And it's really great that we're taking this step in New York. Obviously, I think a big misconception is that you have a union and the union is just going to come in and fix everything. And that's not how it works. You know, we're not going to automatically overnight get the same wages that California has. It's impossible. We're New York, we're a different location, we have different needs. So, but it's a step in the right direction, right? We'll be able to, if we're unionized in this studio, maybe other studios will follow suit, and then we can get like overarching healthcare and just better wages little by little. It's just a step-by-step process, and it's great that we're making the first step. And we're really excited to work with management. They've been really open about working with us. And our next step is starting contract negotiations. So that's really exciting for the studio and all the tip mics who are ready to have better, better working conditions.
Absolutely amazing. So exciting to hear that things are moving forward and just to hear what's going on with this. It's such a great step for New York City animators. My next question is for Joanna. So first of all, I would like to congratulate you on receiving your second Oscar nomination. And the other thing I want to point out before I ask my question is you are the only woman this year nominated for an animation related Oscar for this Oscar season. Can you tell us a bit about this recent Oscar nomination and what led you to this point?
Yeah, well, I think what happened was we won a prize in Clermont-Ferrand in France, and it's an Oscar qualifying prize. And so we then went in the long list of the Oscars. And for people who don't know, there are two ways of getting into the Oscars, and one is if you win a prize in a recognized festival that is linked with the Oscars, and then the other way of doing it is paying for renting a theater in LA. I don't know the other places where you can rent. There are particular places where you can do it, and then you rent it out for I don't even know how many days it is, but it's maybe a week or 3 days or something like that. You pay for that, and then you can also get added on, and then you get shortlisted if you get shortlisted. So there's a vote, and that vote is done by the people in the animation branch. So that's short animation, short live action, and feature animation. So they vote, and then they vote on the nominees as well. So they vote down to the nominees. So I've got into the nominees based on the voting from the animation branch. But now it's all open, so the nominees are voted on. The final winners in all of the categories are voted on by the whole of the Academy. So that's a completely different ball game. But no, very exciting, and shocked and horrified that I am the only woman director in this group. So 1 out of 13, which is appalling. So anyway, so that how do you change these things? I mean, in my own way, you know, I deliberately try and employ more women, and you know, I'm very aware as an employer, you know, that I need to employ more women, and not because I you know, positive discrimination, because the women I employ are fantastic. You know, they're just great at what they do. So yeah, it's just an industry that just needs to become more aware of their, you know, their own unconscious bias, and we just need to employ more women and get more women, like we've all said, telling their own stories. Yeah.
Absolutely. So I have a great question from the audience. This is for anybody who would like to answer. Our question is, do you think that to lead a career in animation for a woman is easier in France or in the US? See, a lot of people think, huh? A lot of thinking.
I think that in both places, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity because there's so much work in animation, you know? But I think that if you want to create your own short films, it's probably easier in France because there's so much more public support. There's so many more funds you can go to get funding. But if you want to work in the industry, there's lots of work in both countries.
And the next question that we have in the chat is, how can the general public help women in animation?
I don't know. That's a really tough question. It's sort of, it feels like, how can the general public help? I don't know. I think it needs to come from within the industry to make any real difference, because the general public are only reacting to what they are offered that the industry has produced. So no, I think it has to come from within.
I'd say that people have to support the movies, but no matter where they come from, like some people seem to realize those last 5 years that animation is actually also for adults. Wow. Something that we all know for a very long time. That's not a discovery at all, but what the general public can do is just to go to the theater and to watch the movie, and go to the festival to watch short movies as well, and just support the industry as a whole, no matter if the movie is made by a woman or a man. Or I don't think that's important, because if we give the industry the audience that it deserves, then it helps the funding, it helps the people from within the industry as well, and it helps the industry grow. So I think that's how the general public can help, is just getting interested in animation, because it helps people who are working inside that industry to make it evolve.
Well, thank you so much for your insights regarding our audience questions. It has been absolutely amazing to get to know each of you a little bit more and talk with you about your initiatives, your work, challenges, successes at this point in your careers. And I wish everybody very much a great rest of your Sunday, and good luck with your next steps and your next endeavors. And I am very excited to, and as I'm sure the rest of our audience is, to kind of follow you and see what those are.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, all of you, Joanna, Ella, Eleanor, Claire, Tylee, and Angela. Thank you so much, Ashley, for moderating, and Nicholas for translating. There's a lot of talent in this room, so thank you for sharing your journey and your thoughts. It really made for a rich discussion and quite multi-layered. There's a lot to unpack, and so it was very actually useful to hear issues of representation, sexual harassment, pay inequality, and finding your place as a director, producer. There's a lot of food for thoughts. And of course, the discussion doesn't stop here. Women in Animation and Les Femmes have been around for a while, making stride forward for women in the field. So you can look up for them online. They both have website, and you can follow their work. And I think Claire was saying, as a general public, really good to see the film, seek them out and demand more. But it is indeed really important to watch this work. And maybe demand to see more short films. They're hard to find outside of festivals, so there's something to do here. So lastly, Animation First is going on online through Monday night, so please do join us. We have several shorts, but also mini shorts program. We're actually honored to show your film, Joanna, Affair of the Art. It can be streamed in a Best of ANSI spotlight on women animators. And there are also new French shorts program features a lot of shorts made by women. So you can go to fiaf.org for more information and to go to the platform. So that concludes our event. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of the day. Bye-bye.